The Galactic Council's warning. The gathering of the Galactic Council. The vast crystal chamber of the Galactic Council shimmered under the glow of suspended orbs, casting a cold blue hue across the domed walls. Inside, representatives from 100 different species sat in silence, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with unease. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air. Grand Admiral Kilos, the Supreme Commander of the HFY Confederation, stood at the center, his two sets of arms clenched behind his back, his dark, scaled face betraying his frustration. "Honorable members of the Council," Kilos began, his voice echoing through the chamber, "I stand before you today to deliver the most humiliating report in the history of our mighty Confederation." The room stirred. Nervous clicks, hums, and guttural murmurs spread across the audience like ripples in still water. The Valuan, a race of crystalline beings who thrived in the void, flickered in disapproval. The Drakians, warlike reptilian creatures with razor-like protrusions along their spines, shifted in their gravity seats. Even the usually indifferent Yulari, floating jellyfish-like beings, pulsed with curiosity. "Our Armada, our fleet of conquest, has failed." Gasps erupted across the chamber. Kilos slammed a clawed fist onto the crystal podium. "We have failed against a species that was deemed primitive. We have failed against humans." The murmurs turned into outright chaos. The Council's reaction. The Speaker of the Council, a towering multi-eyed being known as Elder Xyphos, raised an appendage, silencing the noise. "You claim failure, Admiral. But the humans, these creatures, were supposed to be insignificant. What treachery have they committed to turn the tide?" Kilos inhaled sharply. "Treachery? No, Counselor. It is something far worse. It is their adaptability, their resilience, their refusal to submit." He motioned to the holographic display behind him. A swirling galaxy emerged, zooming into the Sol system, where Earth rotated peacefully in space. But surrounding it were the remains of Silari warships, broken, drifting, lifeless. The evidence of an unexpected, devastating defeat. "I led the Armada," Kilos continued, voice laced with bitterness. "We outnumbered them. We outgunned them. We came prepared for conquest, not war. Yet, the humans did not simply fight. They outthought us. They countered us with strategies so unpredictable, so erratic, that even our most advanced AI systems failed to anticipate their movements." A Xelari counselor, Minister Veckler, leaned forward, his mandibles clicking. "You mean to tell us that a species with no formal space fleet, no intergalactic war history, managed to annihilate our most formidable force?" Kilos nodded. "They are unlike any species we have encountered. When cornered, they evolve. When overwhelmed, they innovate. When faced with extinction, they do not surrender. They fight, to their last breath." The chamber fell into a deep, uneasy silence. The underestimation of humanity. A Yulari scholar hovered forward, her translucent tendrils glowing. "It was our council that declared humanity an insignificant species. We deemed them unworthy of membership, unworthy of attention. We assumed they would fall within days." Kilos sneered, "And that assumption led to our downfall." "They did not fall in days. Instead, they rose in hours." He activated another holographic recording. It showed the initial invasion, a fleet of Silari battleships entering Earth's orbit, their weapons aimed at every major city. The first wave struck hard. London, Beijing, Moscow, New York. The world's infrastructure crumbled under the assault. But then came something unexpected. A counterattack. The recording shifted. Human fighter jets, retrofitted with reverse-engineered alien technology, EMP bursts that disabled entire warships, makeshift space weapons built from satellite defense systems, guerrilla warfare tactics that turned every city into a battlefield. The humans didn't fight like a conventional army. They fought like survivors. And they won. The unbreakable spirit. Kilos exhaled, his rage barely contained. We burned their world, yet they did not beg for mercy. We wiped out their defenses, yet they built new ones overnight. We executed their leaders, yet the next day, there were 10 more in their place. The hologram flickered again, showing a recording from inside a captured human base. A group of battered, wounded soldiers sat together, singing, laughing, sharing food. Even as the war raged, even as death loomed, they refused to break. Kilos turned back to the council. That is what makes them dangerous. A decision to make. Elder Typhos, his multi-eyed gaze unreadable, finally spoke. "And what do you propose, Grand Admiral?" Kilos' expression darkened. "We cannot afford to ignore them any longer. The humans must be eradicated. Completely." His words sent a shiver through the council. The eradication of an entire species was a rare and extreme measure. Minister Veckler, after a long pause, nodded. "If they have defeated us once, they will only become stronger. We must act before they spread beyond their system." Elder Xyphos considered the implications. "Then it is decided. We prepare for total war." The chamber erupted into agreement. The decision was final. Humanity would not be allowed to exist. The echoes of war. Meanwhile, light years away, on a warship orbiting Earth, Dr. Elena Carter intercepted the Council's broadcast. Her hands trembled as she listened. "They're coming again," she whispered, her breath forming a thin fog against the cold glass of the observation deck. Below her, Earth was still smoldering from the last attack, but humanity stood unbroken. She turned to her team of scientists, engineers, and soldiers. "They think we're finished. They think they can erase us." Her voice grew steady. "They have no idea what we're capable of." As Earth's leaders gathered in secret underground bunkers, as the remaining fleets were assembled, as humanity prepared for the final war, one thought echoed through the hearts of every human survivor. We are not prey. We are the storm. The invasion begins. A silence before the storm. The sky above Earth was deceptively peaceful. A bright blue canvas stretched across the continents, interrupted only by the thin white streaks of passing clouds. Cities burned below, yet from the view of those who watched from the secret underground command bunkers, Earth still looked like home. Dr. Elena Carter stood in the dimly lit control center beneath the Rockies, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the steel console. The holographic projection in front of her displayed something terrifying: the return of the Siluri fleet. "They're coming back," she whispered, staring at the growing red blips on the radar. Beside her, General Anton Grayson, a battle-scarred veteran with a cybernetic eye, clenched his fists. "I knew they wouldn't let this go," he muttered. "They were humiliated," said Captain Hiro Tanaka, an elite fighter pilot. "Humiliated species don't retreat forever. They come back to make an example of those who defied them." Dr. Carter exhaled sharply. "This is not just retaliation. This is extermination." The Siluri Confederation, after its crushing defeat, had mobilized its entire war fleet. Not just a few ships, thousands. An armada so vast it blotted out the stars as it entered the Sol system. And this time, they wouldn't underestimate humanity. A new kind of war. The first invasion had caught Earth off guard. This time, Earth was ready. The underground bunkers of the United Earth Defense Network, UEDN, were filled with the best minds humanity had left. Scientists, hackers, engineers, and military strategists worked side by side, their eyes glued to the data streams flooding the holographic displays. "Enemy fleet count?" Grayson asked. A young analyst, barely 20, swallowed nervously. "Estimated 3,400 capital ships, 11,000 smaller support vessels, and planetary siege platforms." A murmur ran through the war room. That was not a fleet, it was an extinction force. Tanaka let out a low whistle. "Well, that's a hell of a welcoming committee." Grayson ignored the joke. "And our defenses?" Dr. Carter straightened. "Since the first invasion, we've made advancements. The war taught us reverse engineering. We've integrated captured Sci-Fi technology into our weapons, armor, and fleet designs. Our orbital defenses are now powered by alien energy sources. And, she hesitated, we developed something experimental. Grayson turned to her sharply. What do you mean? She hesitated for only a second before pulling up a classified schematic. It was a weapon, unlike anything Earth had ever built before. Project Resonator. The secret weapon, Project Resonator. The war room darkened as a three-dimensional projection of the resonator hovered above the table. It was sleek, metallic, a fusion of human and Sci-Fi technology. Carter adjusted her glasses. The resonator is an energy-based weapon designed to disrupt Sci-Fi neural communication on a molecular level. Their bodies function using a biological energy field. Our weapon scrambles it. Grayson's cybernetic eye flickered. You're talking about a biotechnological EMP. She nodded. If we can deploy it across their fleet, we won't just disable their ships. We could incapacitate their soldiers, their pilots, their commanders. It could be a total shutdown of their forces. Tanaka grinned. Now that's the kind of human insanity I like. But Carter wasn't smiling. There's a problem. The room tensed. She turned to Grayson. The resonator requires a direct energy pulse from orbit. Our satellites are still rebuilding after the first invasion. We have only 3 platforms capable of deploying the weapon. The room fell silent. Grayson exhaled. Then we just have to hold the line long enough. The countdown clock ticked down. 3:47:22. Less than 4 hours until the Sci-Fi Armada entered Earth's orbit. Less than 4 hours until the final battle for humanity began. The sky falls. 4 hours later, the first Sci-Fi warships appeared. They didn't arrive quietly. The sky ripped apart as their warp drives disengage, causing massive shockwaves to ripple across the atmosphere. Civilians in underground bunkers could hear the sound of reality distorting above them. The first Sci-Fi dreadnought, the Tyrak-Shah, entered Earth's lower orbit, its massive hull covered in scars from the last battle. It had returned to finish what it started. Then, the first strike came. A blinding blue beam of plasma erupted from the Tyrak-Shah's lower decks, burning straight through the remains of the International Space Station. 100 miles below, millions watched in horror as the night sky was momentarily lit like daylight from the explosion. Then, they started firing on the cities. London, Moscow, Los Angeles, Beijing. The same scorched earth strategy from before. But this time, humanity fired back. The battle begins. The UEDN's forces launched from every hidden base on Earth. Underground missile silos opened across continents. Fighter jets with reverse-engineered thrusters blasted into the sky. Orbital defense platforms came online, firing massive plasma railguns into the atmosphere. For the first time in history, Earth was no longer defenseless. Inside his cockpit, Captain Hiro Tanaka activated his ship's Sci-Fi-based afterburners, feeling the sudden surge of alien energy coursing through his vessel. He grinned, flipping on his comms. This is Tanaka to all squadrons. Let's give these bastards a proper welcome. Dozens of Earth's new hybrid starfighters screamed into the air, facing an enemy that had never expected resistance. Dogfights erupted in the sky. Missiles crisscrossed between human and Sci-Fi ships. The Earth trembled, but humanity refused to yield. The tide turns. Inside the command bunker, Carter stared at the screen. Project Resonator was nearly online. The problem: the primary satellite dish had just been destroyed in the first orbital strike. Her hands clenched into fists. Damn it. We need a way to redirect the signal. Grayson stared at the screen, then suddenly, his cybernetic eye flickered. The moon base. Carter froze. It's been abandoned since the First War, but it still has a functional transmission array. If we can get a team up there to manually activate the uplink, we can still fire the resonator. The plan was insane. Send a small team to a battle-ridden moon base, repair the uplink, and fire the resonator, while Earth was still being bombarded. Carter looked at the screens. Cities were burning. People were dying. She made her choice. Turning to Tanaka's comms, she gave the order. "Captain, you and your squad are going to the moon." Tanaka, locked in a furious dogfight above Earth, simply laughed. "Well," he grinned, "I always wanted to take a vacation." Humanity's counterstrike. Mission: Moon Base Reclamation. The dark surface of the moon stretched out beneath them, a barren wasteland of craters and shadows. Captain Hiro Tanaka's fighter squadron shot through the void, their sleek, hybrid human-alien ships gliding through space as they approached Luna Base Alpha, Earth's abandoned lunar outpost. "This is Moon Team, approaching the target," Tanaka radioed in. His squad, a mix of the best pilots Earth had left, remained focused as they prepared for what might be their last mission. Dr. Elena Carter's voice crackled through the comms from Earth's underground command center. "You need to activate the uplink manually. Without it, the resonator won't fire." "We get it, Doc," Tanaka said. "No uplink, no victory. Let's just hope the auxiliary didn't leave any nasty surprises." He had no idea how wrong he was. The auxiliary's surprise. As Tanaka's squadron neared Luna Base, a shadow shifted among the craters. The auxiliary had already anticipated this move. Suddenly, the moon's surface exploded with movement as buried auxiliary drones activated. Sleek, insect-like war machines rose from beneath the dust, plasma cannons humming as they locked onto the incoming fighters. "Ambush!" shouted Lieutenant Harris, a pilot in Tanaka's squad. Bright plasma beams shot up from the moon's surface, skimming Tanaka's wing as he twisted his controls. Evasive maneuvers. We got company. The battle above the moon erupted in seconds. Human starfighters dodged and weaved, firing high-speed kinetic rounds into the auxiliary drones. The enemy drones were fast, but human reflexes were faster. Tanaka banked hard, locking onto an auxiliary drone and squeezing the trigger. His railgun sent a hyper-accelerated round straight into its core, shredding it into molten debris. But the auxiliary weren't alone. A new auxiliary warship decloaked above the moon, a stealth destroyer armed with weapons powerful enough to wipe out the entire squadron. Tanaka's eyes widened. Oh hell. The assault on Luna Base. On the moon's surface, a separate strike team had already landed. Major Ava Rourke, leader of Earth's elite ground forces, moved quickly with her unit, weapons drawn, scanning the ruins of Luna Base. "The uplink is in the main facility," Rourke said, moving through the abandoned corridors. "We need tow." A hissing sound echoed through the air. "Contact," shouted a soldier. From the dark corners of the base, auxiliary ground forces emerged, their organic armor glistening under the base's emergency lights. The auxiliary were waiting. The firefight erupted instantly. Pulse rifles cracked as human forces unleashed rapid bursts of energy at the advancing auxiliary warriors. The aliens moved with inhuman speed, dodging and retaliating with plasma blades and energy weapons. Rourke ducked behind cover as an auxiliary soldier lunged at her, its plasma dagger slicing inches from her head. She rolled, aimed, and fired point-blank. The alien's chest exploded in a spray of biometallic fluids. They fought like demons, but so did humanity. Earth's last defense. Meanwhile, back on Earth, General Grayson stood in the underground war room, watching as the auxiliary fleet descended upon the planet. Every screen in the command center flashed red as Earth's defense network struggled to hold the line. Cities burned. Orbital defense platforms were overwhelmed. Human casualties mounted. Grayson's cybernetic eye flickered as he turned to his officers. "We need more time." Dr. Carter's voice was tight. "The Moon team needs 20 more minutes to activate the uplink." Grayson turned to his fleet commanders. "Then we hold." On his order, Earth's remaining battleships surged forward, unleashing a suicidal last stand. Sacrifice in the skies. Back near the moon, Tanaka's squadron was pinned down. "We need to take out that stealth destroyer or we're toast," yelled Lieutenant Diaz. Tanaka gritted his teeth. "Then we take it out the old-fashioned way." He turned his ship straight toward the enemy vessel, guns blazing, dodging plasma fire as he closed the gap. Behind him, Pilot Lewis screamed as her fighter was ripped apart by a direct plasma hit. Tanaka locked onto the destroyer's weak point. A desperate plan formed in his mind. "I'm going in." "No," Diaz shouted. Tanaka pushed his engines to max thrust, weaving between enemy fire. At the last moment, he ejected from his cockpit, sending his fighter directly into the destroyer's core. The explosion was blinding. The shockwave ripped through the battlefield as the auxiliary destroyer broke apart. Tanaka, spinning in zero gravity, gasped for air in his emergency suit. His last thought before blacking out was simple. "I hope that was enough." Victory on the moon. Inside Luna Base, Major Rourke and her team reached the uplink chamber. Carter's voice crackled through the radio. "We're out of time. Activate it now." Rourke rushed forward, slamming the activation switch. The uplink roared to life. From Earth, Project Resonator's energy charge began to build. Carter's hands flew over the controls, aligning the targeting system. "Grayson, we're ready to fire." The general nodded. "Then do it." Carter hit the final command. A pulse of energy erupted from the moon, streaking toward Earth's orbit. The resonator fired. The turning point. The energy pulse washed over the auxiliary fleet like a silent tsunami. The effect was immediate. Auxiliary ships flickered, their technology shutting down as their energy systems collapsed. Inside the auxiliary command vessel, Admiral Kalos gasped as his nervous system convulsed. His vision blurred, his body failing as the resonator's pulse disrupted his biology. Across the fleet, auxiliary soldiers screamed. Their neural pathways scrambled, their bodies paralyzed, their ships disabled. The once invincible auxiliary Armada was now nothing more than floating debris. The war had turned. Betrayal in the ranks. The silence after the storm. For the first time in hours, the sky was quiet. Above Earth, the auxiliary fleet hung motionless, disabled by the resonator's devastating pulse. Massive warships, once an unstoppable armada, now drifted like shattered monuments, their sleek hulls flickering with the last remnants of broken energy fields. On Earth's surface, what remained of human defenses stood still, watching in disbelief. They had done it. They had stopped the unstoppable. But in war, victory is never simple. A desperate transmission. Deep in Earth's underground war room, General Anton Grayson stood, arms crossed, his cybernetic eye scanning the battlefield reports. The moment of triumph was already slipping from his grasp. "Something's wrong," Dr. Elena Carter whispered. She was still breathless from the battle, her hands gripping the edge of the console as she analyzed the incoming data. Grayson turned sharply. "What is it?" Carter adjusted the holo display, her face pale. "We disabled their fleet, but we didn't destroy them. The auxiliary command ship is still intact." Grayson exhaled. "We can't take that risk." His voice hardened. "We finish them now." The command center erupted into murmurs as Grayson turned to his officers. "I want every operational ship preparing for a final strike. We wipe them out before they recover." But before the order could be executed, a sudden hiss of static filled the war room. A transmission. A message from the auxiliary. The screen flickered. Then Admiral Kalos appeared. His reptilian features were twisted in agony, his scaled skin glowing with the aftershock of the resonator's disruption. But his yellow eyes burned with something else. Defiance. "Humans," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "You have done the impossible. You have won." The war room fell into dead silence. "I come to you not in strength," Kalos continued, "but in desperation." His breath was labored. "My people are dying." Carter's eyes widened. The resonator. It's killing them. A divide among humanity. Grayson's expression remained cold. And why should we care? Kilos stared through the screen, his body trembling. Because if you do not help us, I will unleash hell upon your world. The entire war room froze. Carter leaned forward. You have nothing left, Kilos. The Admiral grinned, a dark, painful smile. Do you think that we came here without a contingency? Carter's blood ran cold. Grayson's voice was ice. Explain. Kilos lifted his clawed hand, pressing a trembling finger against a control panel on his arm. The screen shifted, displaying a hidden fleet, positioned just outside the Sol system. An entire reserve armada, a force twice the size of the one they had just defeated. The war room erupted into chaos. They had a second fleet. Someone shouted. Carter's breath caught in her throat. This was never just an invasion. She turned to Grayson. It was a test. They were studying us, learning how we fight. Kilos chuckled weakly. And now, even if I die, they will come. They will finish what I started. The war room fell into stunned silence. Then, Grayson spoke. Then we kill you before they arrive. But before he could give the order, a voice interrupted. No. President Aria Velasquez, Earth's last surviving world leader, stepped forward. We don't kill them, she said softly. Grayson's eyes snapped to her. Madam President, we cannot risk letting them recover. Velasquez's dark eyes never left Kilos. We have a chance to end this war without another battle. Grayson stepped forward aggressively. If we let them live, they will come back stronger. We finish them now. The room split in half. Some agreed with Grayson, others with Velasquez. And just like that, humanity was divided. The betrayal begins. While the leaders argued, a hidden transmission was sent. A message, encrypted and untraceable. Deep within the war room, a figure moved quietly, slipping away unnoticed. Their fingers danced over a console, sending a secret signal to the Xilari fleet. A single word was sent. Survive. The traitor vanished into the shadows. The assassination attempt. Hours later, deep inside the command bunker, General Grayson stood alone, his mind burning with frustration. The war should have ended here. And yet, humanity was hesitating. A soft footstep behind him made him turn. Too late. A blade slashed across his back, his cybernetic eye flickering as pain exploded through his spine. He staggered, catching sight of his attacker. A human soldier. One of his own men. A traitor. The assassin's eyes were cold. We cannot let you destroy our only chance at peace. Grayson gritted his teeth, blood dripping onto the steel floor. He growled. You don't know what you've done. The assassin raised their blade for the final strike. A gunshot rang out. The assassin collapsed, a bullet hole in their skull. President Velasquez stood in the doorway, pistol still smoking. She stared at Grayson. You were right. Grayson sank to his knees, clutching his wound. His voice was rough. They sent a signal. Velasquez's expression turned to horror. What? Grayson coughed, his vision darkening. The Xilari fleet knows we hesitated. Above Earth, beyond the farthest planets of the Sol system, in the endless void of deep space, the Xilari Second Armada received the signal. Their engines roared to life. Their weapons began charging. And then, they jumped to hyperspace, straight toward Earth. The final stand. The Second Armada arrives. The vast emptiness of space rippled. Then, they came. The Xilari Second Armada emerged from hyperspace like a tidal wave of destruction. The first fleet had been a crushing force. This one, an extinction-level event. They didn't arrive with thousands of ships. They arrived with tens of thousands. Colossal siege-class dreadnoughts, advanced stealth destroyers, bioengineered warships that warped the very fabric of reality around them. At the center of it all, a command ship the size of a moon. The Council of the Xilari Confederation had sent their entire remaining military force. Their mission was simple: erase humanity. Earth's leaders make their choice. Inside the underground command bunker, the air was thick with urgency. The leaders of the United Earth Defense Network, UEDN, President Aria Velasquez, General Anton Grayson, and Dr. Elena Carter, stood before a holographic display of the incoming auxiliary fleet. The numbers were staggering. Dr. Carter's voice was tight. "We don't have enough firepower to hold them off." Grayson winced from his wound, still recovering from the assassination attempt. But his voice was firm. "Then we don't hold them off. We stop them before they reach us." Velasquez exhaled, pressing her fingers to her temples. "We've already pushed past the limits of survival. This is something else." Carter turned, her expression grim but resolute. "We still have Project Resonator. If we can amplify its range, we can." "No." Grayson's cybernetic eye flickered. That weapon was never meant to be a second strike. It was designed to take them by surprise. Now that they know about it, they'll have countermeasures. A heavy silence settled in the room. Velasquez finally spoke. "Then we have only one option." She turned to the screen, to the colossal auxiliary command ship at the center of the Armada. "We cut off the head." Grayson's lips curled into a grim smile. "A decapitation strike." Carter's brow furrowed. "You mean, go after their leadership directly?" Velasquez nodded. "If we can take out their high command, their forces will be thrown into disarray. Their command structure is hierarchical. Without leaders, they'll fracture." Grayson leaned forward, resting his weight on the table. "Then we'll need a strike team. A direct infiltration. We take their leaders out from the inside." Carter exhaled. "We'd be flying straight into their most secure stronghold." Grayson smirked. "Sounds like a good way to die." Velasquez placed her hands on the table. "Then we die fighting." The final mission. Hours later, Earth's last remaining fleet launched. 100 warships against 50,000. It was a suicide mission. But humanity was out of choices. At the center of it all, a single strike team was preparing for the most dangerous mission in history. Inside the lead ship, Captain Hiro Tanaka, recently recovered from his near-death experience on the moon. Suited up, his experimental fighter, one of the last working auxiliary human hybrid ships, gleamed under the hangar lights. Across from him, Major Ava Rourke, leader of Earth's most elite ground forces, loaded her rifle. Tanaka smirked. "You sure you're ready for this, Major?" Rourke snapped her magazine into place. "I was born for this. The mission: breach the auxiliary command ship, assassinate the High Council, end the war." Velasquez had given one final order before they launched. "No matter what happens, we stop them here. Earth must be the last battle." And then, they went to war. The battle for Earth. The moment humanity's fleet entered range, the auxiliary fired. Space exploded into chaos. Massive plasma beams ripped through the void, consuming entire battleships in the blink of an eye. Earth's forces dodged and weaved, unleashing every weapon they had. But the auxiliary had adapted. They countered Earth's stolen technology. Their ships evolved mid-battle, recalibrating their shields, anticipating human maneuvers. Within minutes, half of Earth's fleet was gone. But the strike team made it through. Tanaka, leading the charge, pushed his engines to the limit, dodging through a sea of enemy fire as they approached the auxiliary command ship. "Almost there," Rourke shouted. Tanaka gritted his teeth. "We won't get a second chance." With a final push, their ships breached the hull of the auxiliary command ship. The infiltration had begun. Inside the Lion's Den, the auxiliary command ship was a city of war. Organic corridors pulsed with alien energy. Auxiliary soldiers flooded the halls, their bodies radiating with the power of their homeworld. Rourke and her team moved fast. They had one objective: reach the High Council's chamber. Gunfire erupted in the corridors. Auxiliary warriors charged forward, blades glowing with plasma energy. Human soldiers met them head-on. Rourke took point, ripping through enemies with precision shots, her squad falling one by one as they fought deeper inside. Tanaka moved alongside her, blasting down enemy drones, his body burning with exhaustion. Finally, they reached the High Council chamber. The assassination of the Xilari High Council. Inside the chamber, the Xilari High Council stood waiting. Tall, regal, their bioluminescent eyes flickering with something other than fear. Acceptance. You fought well, the Xilari Supreme Leader said. Rourke raised her gun. This war ends now. The Xilari leader tilted his head. You still do not understand, human. We were never meant to survive this. Tanaka frowned. What? The Supreme Leader smiled and activated a self-destruct command. The entire Xilari command ship began to collapse. The escape and the end of the war. Rourke's heart pounded. Move E. Now. The team rushed back through the corridors, the entire structure imploding around them. Tanaka dragged a wounded soldier, barely making it to their ships. The moment they escaped into space, the Xilari command ship detonated, a blinding explosion that consumed the entire fleet. The remaining Xilari forces, leaderless and scattered, fled. The war was over. The aftermath. A new dawn. Earth had survived. Billions were dead. Cities lay in ruins. The planet would never be the same. But humanity had done the impossible. They had faced annihilation. And won. President Velasquez, standing on the burning ruins of Earth's capital, lifted her gaze to the sky. For the first time in history, the stars belonged to humanity. Humanity's triumph. The silence after the storm. For the first time, in what felt like an eternity, space was quiet. The Xilari fleet was gone, destroyed, leaderless, or fleeing into the void. The once invincible war machine that had sought to erase humanity had crumbled in the face of the most unexpected enemy in galactic history. But Earth had paid a terrible price. The skies above were scared, filled with the wreckage of fallen warships, both human and alien. The atmosphere still carried the echoes of war, with streaks of flame as burning debris rained down over the planet. On the surface, billions were dead. Entire cities lay in ruin. The landscape was unrecognizable. Oceans had boiled, continents had shifted, and the world that once was would never be the same. But humanity still stood, and that, more than anything, was victory. A world on the brink. In the remains of the United Earth Defense Network, UEDN, headquarters, President Arya Velasquez stood before a crowd of survivors. There were no grand celebrations, no cheers, no banners of victory, only the sound of the wind through the crumbling ruins, the quiet murmur of people tending to the wounded, and the weight of history pressing down on all of them. Velasquez took a slow breath before speaking. Her voice, raw and weary, carried across the ruined city. We have endured the end of the world. Silence. We have lost more than we ever thought possible. Our homes, our families, our history, burned to ash. People shifted, their faces hollow, their eyes haunted. But we are still here. She lifted her chin, her dark eyes blazing. We stood against the greatest force the galaxy has ever known. We stood when they told us to kneel. We fought when they told us to surrender. And today, we have proven that we are not prey. Her voice rose. We are not victims. We are not forgotten. We are humanity. And we will rise again. The crowd stirred, the fire returning to their eyes. General Anton Grayson, his body still weak from the assassination attempt, saluted her. Captain Hiro Tanaka, leaning on crutches, gave a tired but defiant grin. Dr. Elena Carter, her hands still stained with the work of war, nodded silently. The war was over, but the battle for the future was just beginning. The rebuilding of Earth. The next months were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Cities had to be rebuilt from the ground up. Governments, broken and scattered, had to be reforged. The very idea of civilization had to be redefined. For the first time in human history, there were no nations left, no borders, no separate flags. There was only Earth. The survivors worked as one, piecing together a world that had been shattered. But they weren't alone. Among the wreckage of the auxiliary fleet, scientists and engineers salvaged advanced alien technology, warp drives, plasma reactors, biotechnological materials far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. With every passing day, humanity evolved. Ships were rebuilt. Faster, stronger, no longer bound by the limits of Earth's past. Energy sources were revolutionized, unlocking power that could fuel cities for centuries. And more than anything, a new dream began to take shape. Humanity would never again be caught unprepared. Earth was not just going to survive. Earth was going to conquer the stars. A warning from the stars. It was 3 months after the war when the first message came. Deep in one of the remaining orbital relay stations, Dr. Elena Carter sat hunched over a console, scanning the galactic frequencies. At first, she thought it was just noise, a faint, flickering signal from the depths of space. But as she decoded it, her blood ran cold. She immediately called for General Grayson. When he arrived, she turned the console toward him, her fingers shaking as she pointed to the screen. Grayson leaned in. His cybernetic eye scanned the data. Then he froze. The message was not from the auxiliary. It was from someone else. Someone worse. The transmission was ancient, thousands of years old. But the message was clear. The auxiliary had not been the first to try and conquer the galaxy, and they would not be the last. The message contained star charts, maps of regions of space that no species dared enter. A warning. And at the very end of the transmission, a name. The Dominion. Grayson exhaled. What the hell is the Dominion? Carter looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I think we just found out who the auxiliary were running from. The birth of the Terran Imperium. The moment the transmission was decrypted, President Velasquez called for an emergency summit. For the first time in history, humanity's greatest minds gathered as one. Scientists, strategists, engineers, and leaders sat together in what remained of the Earth's capital. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were now preparing for something far bigger. Humanity must never be caught off guard again, Velasquez said, standing before the assembly. The auxiliary thought we were weak. They were wrong. She paused, her voice growing steely. But if this Dominion is coming, we need to be more than just survivors. We need to be the ones who strike first. A murmur ran through the room. Dr. Carter adjusted her glasses. If we use the auxiliary's technology, we could expand beyond the Sol system faster than ever imagined. Grayson nodded. Then let's do it. The decision was made. Humanity would no longer wait for war to come to them. They would become the storm. Within weeks, the first Terran fleet was born. Warships armed with the most advanced technology humanity had ever wielded. For the first time in history, humanity was no longer bound to Earth. They were going to the stars. Not as explorers, not as refugees, but as conquerors. A message to the galaxy. One final broadcast was sent across the galactic frequencies. A message to anyone watching. To any empire that thought Earth was weak. To any force that might try to erase humanity again. The Terran Imperium is rising. We are done running. We are done hiding. We are coming. A new dawn. The day humanity became something more. The war was over. The planet had survived. But Earth was no longer just a world. It was the birthplace of something far greater. For thousands of years, humanity had looked to the stars with wonder. Dreaming, hoping, reaching. Now they looked with purpose. And for the first time in history, the galaxy looked back in fear. A broken world, a united species. The rebuilding of Earth was unlike anything ever attempted. Every major city had been reduced to ruins. Infrastructure had collapsed. Governments had fallen. But humanity was not defeated. They worked as one, with a singular focus, to rebuild not as nations, but as a species. The old world was gone. The new one had no borders, no flags, no divisions, only Earth. For the first time, humans were not French, American, Chinese, or Russian. They were Terrans. The final casualty of the war was the past, and in its place, something stronger was born. The first Terran fleet. From the ruins of fallen warships, humanity built something new. The first fleet of the Terran Imperium. Not just rebuilt versions of human vessels, but ships integrated with the very technology that Xilari had once used against them. Faster, stronger, unpredictable. The first warships of the Imperium rose from Earth's atmosphere like blackened steel gods, their hulls pulsing with stolen alien energy. Among them stood the flagship of the New Age, TSS Revenant, the most powerful warship ever created by human hands, a vessel built for one purpose: to make sure humanity was never threatened again. General Anton Grayson stood aboard its bridge, staring into the void. A world had died, but something far more dangerous had been born, and it would not be ignored. The last warning. Dr. Elena Carter stared at the decrypted transmission, the one that had shaken every surviving leader to their core. The Dominion, an ancient force, older than the Xilari, older than any recorded civilization, a galactic empire that had once ruled everything. The Xilari had not been conquerors. They had been fugitives, and now that humanity had won, the Dominion would notice them. Carter took a slow breath and turned to President Aria Velasquez. "We have a choice," Carter said. "We can hide, stay on Earth, hope they never come." Velasquez shook her head. "We both know that's not an option." Carter nodded. Then she tapped a control panel, and across the galactic frequencies, a new message was sent. "To all those who watch, to all those who rule, to those who believe we are beneath them. We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not forgive. We do not run. We will not wait for war to come to us. We will bring it to you." The message was clear, and the galaxy listened. The first galactic war begins. It started as a whisper in the void. A single human warship entered Dominion space, a scouting vessel, watching, waiting. Then another. Then an entire Terran battle group. The first shots were fired. The Dominion, once undisputed rulers of the galaxy, found something they had never expected. A species that did not bow. A species that did not kneel. A species that did not recognize gods or emperors. The Terran Imperium was not there to negotiate. They were there to conquer. The rise of the Terran Imperium. On the ruins of Earth's capital, a monument was built. Not for the past, but for the future. At its center, 3 words were carved into the stone. Words that every human would remember. Never again. Never again would they be prey. Never again would they be erased. Never again would they let another species decide their fate. As the first Terran fleets left Earth's orbit, heading toward the stars that had once seemed so distant, a single thought echoed in the minds of every human who watched. The war was not over. It was only just beginning. Epilogue. A galaxy in flames. Light years away, in the heart of Dominion space, a council of ancient rulers gathered in a throne room of burning suns. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, and for the first time, they were afraid. A single Dominion warlord, draped in robes of living shadow, whispered into the silence. They should not have survived. Another, his voice as deep as the void itself, replied. And yet, they did. A final ruler, her eyes glowing with a power beyond understanding, simply closed her fingers into a fist. Then we will erase them. But even as she spoke, a single Terran warship had already entered Dominion space, and with it came the future. The end.